Welcome to the Truth Over Facts podcast. I'm your host, Dylan, and my co-host, Ronnie.
What's up, Dylan? What's up, everybody?
Not much. Been back in a jiffy. I mean, been a while, probably about a week and a half, and these two guys got fired. Tucker got fired, and Don Lemon got fired. I think the system always has to make a, what do they call it, a sacrifice to the lamb god. And
Yeah.
it's kind of bizarre that Tucker from the right and then Don from the left had to both get axed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they call it a sacrificial,
Sacrificial lamb, dog.
yeah,
The
sacrificial
sacrificial
lamb.
lamb.
But you know
I
what they should
think
do?
I think the reason why they got rid of Don Lemon is because Tucker was the first to go, and they're like, "All right, fair game, let's go."
Yeah, I think what they should do is really throw the elite media into a tailspin, is kind of do like a Skip Bayless kind of thing and a
Yeah.
Shannon Sharp show. They should join forces and do like something on YouTube and just
Yeah.
call it both sides. Heads and tails, literally. But yeah, they both got fired and shit after like years of being on both. But I mean, this is where you're getting at. Like, I think out of Fox News and CNN, these two were the biggest viewers or draw to viewers. And this is where we kind of said before in previous podcasts, this is where the system is starting to cocoon itself
Yep.
by any means necessary, because the shit is collapsing and it's
Yeah.
picking up speed and they can't control the narrative, because Don Lemon always created questions for the left and Tucker Carlson always created questions for the right.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, this is where you're going to start to, as I said before, this is where shit starts to spiral out of control, because now we're in a death spiral. And you know the system is failing now to a point where now they're trying to, like, how do you put it, like the octopus, right? The tentacles are falling off and shit, and there's just a brain, but they can always regrow new tentacles.
Yeah.
So they're trying to shear off the tentacles that they kind of seem like will infect the whole entire rest of the octopus brain or some shit like that.
Mm-hmm.
The vampire squid. What you got going on?
Nothing. Nothing, dog. Just trying to get on Twitter. It's not really working right now.
Yeah, I mean, the bond market, I've been paying attention on Twitter and the bond market. The bond market is screaming fucking like there's a debt problem going on because the debt ceiling is coming up. And what is going on right now with the debt ceiling is that they said the Treasury, I think back in January, otherwise November, was taking extraordinary measures to keep paying its bills, right?
Yeah.
So that's essentially how the debt system works: is you need to give us more debt so we can pay off debt. So you need to give us an unlimited credit card so we can pay off all the other credit cards.
Mhm.
Well, no. So now it used to be, I think they were saying like they're gonna have to like start canceling Social Security checks and shit,
Yeah.
because Social Security's bankrupt. The whole system's bankrupt. That's why all the banks are failing out, because they're all insolvent.
You got Ron Johnson going around Capitol Hill preaching Social Security is a scam.
It
It's not
is.
wrong.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you never had Social Security. Security was created during the Great Depression and shit, because otherwise it was people were going to slit the politicians' throats and shit.
Mhm.
So FDR kind of like said, "We'll give you a little breadcrumbs forever." But the tax receipts, because everybody had to pay more taxes and shit.
Mhm.
So essentially, now the government has less taxes because all the capital gains went down last year. People were losing money on real estate and shit. So now the government has even less money coming in this year. So it pushed the debt ceiling up like till May. I think maybe next month we might hit it.
Mm-hmm.
In the bond market right now, the 1 month and the 3 month is so freaking inverted right now because everybody's like freaking out now because it pushed up the debt ceiling even faster now. And now this is where like McCarthy, the Republicans, Taylor Major Green or whatever her name, Major Payne, I call her.
Major pain.
This is where like they're saying like, oh, we're not, don't pass the debt ceiling. We need to cut spending and shit. Like people don't understand. Like they always try to play this game. They did it back in like 2011 and shit like that. They've always raised it, but this is
Mm-hmm.
part of what we were talking about before. Like this is where you hit the end game, where out of left field, or they call it a black swan, where it comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Oh, you've been getting away with this for 100 years of constantly raising the debt. And if we don't raise the debt, we default. And essentially, if we default, the dollar goes to zero.
Mm-hmm.
All your assets, like the ATM stop spitting bills, like the dollar is monopoly money at that point. And that's why I said before, like people don't understand how quickly hyperinflation can hit.
Yeah.
And that's where, like I said before, like buckle up and shit because you're hitting this perfect storm that's coming right now where neither wants to back down, but at the same time, the government. I don't know if you saw McCarthy went to the stock exchange
I didn't
recently.
see that.
Yeah, he went to the stock exchange, and essentially what he was saying to the stock market was, "You need to essentially crash in order for us to get shit done." That's what he was saying,
Huh.
but he was doing it politely in a political way, saying like, we need to cut spending and shit like that. We've reached the something called the law of diminishing returns,
Mm-hmm.
where for every dollar we would spend with debt, we could get like $5 of GDP.
Yeah.
Now it's completely opposite. Now we have to spend $5 of debt and get only $1 of GDP. Well, how do you reverse that? Well, you have to like destroy companies and shit. You have to you have to purge out all the bad companies. The government has to cut. It's very similar to what happened in the 1970s and shit.
Yeah.
You had railroad companies collapsing in the 70s. You had some of the biggest banks at the time. I think it was called uh, Lincoln National Bank in Illinois was the biggest bankruptcy in the 70s. And that's where you started to see towards the late 70s and early 80s, like the South American countries started to collapse and shit like that because we
Mm-hmm.
loaned out all this money. But as I said before, come August, I think it'll hit in fall because now we've reached the point where the private sector and the government, somebody's got to survive,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And the Federal Reserve only has enough money to print to bail out. They can't bail out both.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I said before, if we're going to hit hyperinflation within a matter of months, what have you, because the government and the uh, Wall Street, somebody needs a bailout. And the Federal Reserve can't bail out both because it would be like the balance sheet on the Federal Reserve is at, I think, maybe 8 trillion now,
Mm-hmm.
maybe 8.5, and we already had banks failing.
Well, on top of that, all the BRICS nations are, exchanging
De-dollarizing, so now
currency
all those
and
dollars are coming back.
yeah, exactly, because they're exchanging currency in the Chinese yuan now, and so all
Yep.
that currency is going to be making its way back to the U.S.
Mhm.
And yeah, it doesn't matter. It's not going to matter how much money you have. You're still going to be broke.
Yep, exactly right. And this is where um you ever seen the movie Repo Men with Jude Law and Forrest Whitaker? Good movie
Uh,
where they
yeah, were they like they're like organ, yeah,
Repo Men for
yeah,
organs and
for
shit.
organs, yeah.
Right. They sell you a lie like, oh, you owe it to your family, and then they give you a artificial heart that's worth $1 million, and if you can't
Mhm.
make the payments, they set you up for debt for life.
It's almost like that. It's like that movie with Justin Timberlake, Out of Time.
Yeah. Yep.
Is that
And
what
then,
it's called? Out of Time?
yeah, I think it's called Out of Time. That was a pretty good
That was a
premise
good
of a movie.
movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was at the beginning of Repo Men, because it was made in 2010. So, and it takes place in the future, but it's kind of similar to the movie The Purge, where the government goes bankrupt, and because the government goes bankrupt, they have to either inflate their debts away,
Hmm.
otherwise they have to start cutting Social Security,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Have to start breaking their promises in order for them to survive. But
Mm.
this is where you're going to get the upheaval of the people, where they're like, no, you fuckers need to take a pay cut, and you corrupt politicians need to take a pay. Why do you think Nancy Pelosi pulled the plug right before all this shit happened, right?
Hmm.
They all started jumping ship, you know?
Did they vote on the debt limit bill this week?
They say that they will, but it's just a game of chicken. And
Hmm.
essentially, what's going on in the stock market right now is everybody is front running the Fed.
Yeah.
So that's why the stock market is kind of wobbling right now, is because everybody's front run the Fed by buying stocks because they know they're going to have to cut interest rates. So if they cut interest rates, they're going to have to print more money, which means stocks will go up. And it's not necessarily that stocks are going up, it's just that they're going to cost more.
Hmm.
It's like taking a pizza and cutting it into two slices. Now they got to cut it into 8 slices, but it's still the same amount, right?
So McCarthy is pretty much going to kill government spending.
No, he's essentially asking the stock market to crash so that they can raise the debt ceiling, because this is where the political game and the political nightmare convenes with the municipalities and the government and the economy collapsing. Like, you can't save it all, right?
Mhm.
And this is where you have a perfect storm, where you have the government can't pay its bills. Uh, Everyday person can't pay their bills, but at the same time, the stock market is making record profits or whatnot.
Hmm.
And but the stock market owns the government, like fascism. So they're going to play chicken with the government, and this is where the Federal Reserve is going to have to choose, kind of like the 1970s.
Hmm.
In the 1970s, the Federal Reserve, who was done by Paul Volcker, chose the dollar, to save the dollar, because if he can save the dollar, you can save the government, you can save everyday people and shit, but it's going to be really, really bad.
What if he would have chose gold?
Well, you could have chose gold and stuff like that, and that's what a lot of people did. There were two brothers called the
Koch brothers.
no, not the Koch brothers. They were called the
Weinstein brothers.
no, um there were two brothers who tried to corner the silver market in the late 70s. I forget their names. I want to say like the
Stallone brothers.
no, Frank and Sly. No, they tried to corner the silver market and they ended up going bust or whatnot, because they tried to corner the market and then they couldn't do it. The market was too big.
Yeah.
So they ended up collapsing it. So like in the early 1970s, gold
Hmm.
was at $35 an ounce, I think. By the
Yeah.
1980s, it was like $800.
Oh wow, yeah.
So
Holy
in 10
cow.
right, so in 10 years that was all the inflation.
Yeah.
So that's how quickly. So like silver right now is at $25. It could skyrocket up to $600 an ounce.
Yeah.
And that's how quickly that hyperinflation can funnel out, you
Hmm.
know. I mean, look at the grocery store and shit. I just went to the grocery store the other. I got $50 worth, and I didn't get shit. You know,
Yeah.
I picked
I
out
mean
a Twix.
eggs went down.
Yeah, but I picked out a Twix bar, and it was like literally a buck for one stick. It
Hmm.
was like $2 for a Twix. I was like, I put it back. I was like, damn it.
I don't know if you saw this or not, but did you see that McDonald's opened up their first fully automated, no employee McDonald's location?
Yeah, I didn't see that, but that's kind of where they're transitioning to. My roommate, he lost his debit card. Well, he didn't lose it. It got identity theft or whatnot.
Oh yeah.
Somebody was using his
So they
credit card.
canceled it on them, yeah.
Yeah, somebody was using his credit card in New Jersey or some shit. Ben Affleck or Matt Damon
Yeah.
fucker.
Matt Damon. mean?
Jersey or Boston, they were using it. But so for the whole entire like past week, he had to use his wallet on his phone. So he'd go up to like a we were at the grocery store picking up some diapers for a diaper party. He went and, did the iPhone thing
Mm-hmm.
with the Wi-Fi, but he went to the bar and he couldn't use it.
Oh.
So that was a perfect example of what they're trying to do. They're trying to automate everything so because you can always track your phone, you can't track your wallet, right? But if your
Yeah.
wallet is on your phone now, you can track it.
Was he all squared away now? Did you get a new debit card and stuff, or is he
No,
just
it's
waiting
still
on?
in the mail. So I won't say the name of the bank that he has, but he went there in person because this happened on, I think, a Friday. And with your mobile app nowadays, with a lot of the banks, you can just shut off your credit card right off of the app.
Mm-hmm.
So he went to the bank the next day and he's like, "Oh, I need a temporary one or whatnot." And they're like, "Yeah, we stopped doing that." And he's like, "What the fuck you mean you stopped doing that? Like, you've been doing it ever since I've had you." They're
Mm-hmm.
like, "Oh, we stopped doing that because of COVID or some shit." He goes, "What does COVID have to do with you getting me a new card right now?" Like,
Mm-hmm.
so now he has to wait 7 to 10 business days. So he was bitching at the teller, like, "What the fuck is?" He's like, "What is the point of?"
Yeah, that
He goes,
sucks.
"So you used to do it in store, in the bank, to give me a temporary one. Now you don't do it. Now I got to
Yep.
wait 7, 10 days to use
Time is
my own
money.
money."
Time is
Yeah.
money.
So she was like, "Well, you can take out money now." He goes, "I don't wanna." He's like, "I want to use it when I use it." He goes, "How the hell am I supposed to know how much I'm going to use?" He goes, "It's a weekend."
Mm-hmm.
Goes, "Well, I'm sorry, sir." So he was all pissed. He's like, "Son of a bitch."
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's essentially what they're trying to do is they're trying to go to a cashless society. But they're going to need a crisis even bigger than COVID to flip the switch. I mean, that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of what I was saying with the whole entire ESG shit. We
Yeah.
need to switch over to electric vehicles. Well, World War is a perfect example of why they will try to bully everybody into getting an EV because we need to use that fuel and diesel and shit for the tanks because there's no electric tanks, right?
That's a good point.
So they'll have to ration it on our side, but in all reality, it's just another excuse to control everybody into EVs. But who
Your
owns all the chip makers? Taiwan. So if China takes over Taiwan, you don't have no EVs.
your boy Bernie Sanders is endorsing Biden.
I thought they were both dead. Who gives a shit about 2020?
DeSantis can run for president without resigning under Florida Senate amendment.
Well, this is where we said before, like this is where it's going to start getting really, really weird because the government is going to start changing rules for the future.
Mm-hmm.
And, I even said maybe Tucker Carlson should run for president or even vice president. But at the same time, it won't matter because the system is deteriorating so much. You know what I mean? It's like catching a fallen knife of shit.
Yeah. What's
And
up with Nikki Haley? Have you heard anything about her?
no, I think they just kind of like, all right, whatever. Just
She's
kind of
like,
like somebody just
yeah,
palmed
all
their
right,
head and
yeah,
moved her
just
out.
get back there.
Yeah, somebody
Some
just
people
palmed
are
their head
saying
and moved
that
out of the
Vivek.
way, bitch.
Some people are saying that Vivek Ramaswamy, whatever his name is, that the guy
Indian guy,
that's huh?
the Indian guy, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Some people are speculating that the reason why Don Lemon got fired was because of his debate with him.
Yeah, that's what I heard. Isn't that guy? Yeah, I can't pronounce his fucking name. That's not my fault. That's you should have came up with the easier name. Yeah,
Ramswamy,
yeah,
yeah,
Shwami.
Vivek Ramswamy, yeah.
You
Well,
should have just came
anyways,
up with a better,
y-
easier
you
name,
know,
like Tim.
like he was pretty much saying like I don't know, Don Lemon got pretty pissed when when Vivek was telling him that the NRA was pretty much used to protect, black people's rights after
Yeah,
slavery so it wouldn't happen again.
yeah, it was.
And he got so offended by that.
Who, Don?
Yeah, Don Lemon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like he got schooled on his own history.
He always does because he's a fucking idiot, and that's just it. Like, I remember seeing that interview with Morgan Freeman, and
Yeah.
Morgan Freeman cut his ass in half. Like,
Don't
dude,
talk
he's
about
like, yeah, he's
Don't.
like, what are you talking about? He's like, dude, look, where are we right now? We're on TV. And he's like, what do you say? If you want to end racism, stop talking
Yeah,
about it.
stop
Like,
talking about it.
right. Quit bringing it up, dude.
Yeah.
And that's just it. That one guy who you were just talking, I can't even pronounce his name, but I know who you're
Vivek.
talking
Just
about.
do say Vivek. That's his first name, Vivek.
Vivek, okay. Is he a Democrat or
He's a
Republican?
Republican. He's
Really?
he's he's running for president. Yeah.
Well, that's odd. I mean, but that's what I mean.
And
Like,
then so is Larry Elder. Larry Elder's running for president. Mike Pompeo backed out, which yes,
Mike
deservedly so.
Pompeo
He
is a
should
war
have.
pig.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's exactly why he backed out because enough people gave him a bunch of crap about how he knew that the CIA killed Kennedy and
Yeah, well, everybody knew that. It's just,
didn't have the balls to disclose it publicly.
well, he was probably the one who talked Trump away from, like, um, I think it was 2017 or 19. They were supposed to, they did this like shit all the way back in the 1990s when Oliver Stone came out with John F. Kennedy, JFK
Yeah,
movie.
yeah.
Well, Congress, it created such a stir that Congress came up with it or whatnot and said, hey, you need to release all the forms in the 2017 or 2019 because they all knew they were going to be dead
And
and
they just
shit.
release the same bullshit over and over again. And the thing
Yeah,
is, most of the people in like everybody involved in that is dead.
yeah. But it's, um,
It just shows you that the government really does fear the people.
it does, but that's why it eventually ends up losing control. It's chaos theory.
Yeah.
The more you try to control something, the more out of control it becomes. An example of chaos theory is a pinball machine.
Mm-hmm.
You control when the ball is initiated, you control the bumpers and shit, but the more harder, but you can't control the touch of the bumpers. So the more and more you hit it, the more and more harder it goes, bounces off the shit.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, this is where the government is starting to unravel and shit because, oh, we're going to release the classified documents, but they're all redacted. Half the shit's all blacked out. And it's like, well, what is the point of that? So we're just going to automatically assume that you're guilty of it, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
if you can't release the full information, we'll just automatically conclude, theoretical wise, that you're already full of shit. And all the conspiracy theories that we've been told have been conspiracy theories throughout the years are real.
Did you see this lady? Her name's E. Jean Carroll. She filed a lawsuit um against Donald Trump for rape
Sexual
or something.
rape or something?
Yes, yeah, rape. And
Wasn't in like
she
a Macy's store or some shit, and he
I
said like
have
she's not my
no
type.
idea. But this chick looks just like she sounds and she almost looks like she could be like Nancy Pelosi's sister.
Yeah, she reminds me of. I saw a picture. It kind of reminds me of Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah, yeah, she does. Yeah, exactly with her short hair. Yeah.
Yeah, but like I said before, like Trump's a pig and shit, and I wouldn't put it past me that he did try to do that because he's just so egotistical and shit. He thinks he gets away with murder.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're somebody who's egotistical like Trump, you think you can get away from everything. Why do you think every single time he plays victim and shit, oh, they're coming after me and shit? It's like, dude, you mean to tell me out of all the crimes and shit that he committed, he actually committed one of them? Of course he committed one of them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I
I
saw
don't
that.
I don't think the ratings are gonna change as much for CNN with Don Lemon out, but what do you think it's gonna be like for Fox now that Tucker's out?
They're both gonna tank. Fox's
I
stock
think
was taking a
Fox
shit.
I think Fox is gonna take the bigger hit. They get the most ratings, but they're gonna lose a shit ton of ratings. They just Bud Lighted themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Like Tucker Carlson, I think pretty sure he is the most watched host on that
TV.
channel.
Yeah, like he even beats Ellen because Ellen ain't even on. But that's what I mean. He was one of the most watched hosts and stuff like that.
Personally, I think it's because, Tucker wanted to, you know, dive deeper into a lot of the issues that he was getting at, like January 6th, when he did his segments on January 6th. They pretty much, like, he did it for, like, what was it, like 2 days, and then they cut it off. Like, he had to stop doing it. Like, I don't know if he had to, but he just abruptly stopped covering it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there is going to be more stuff that was brought to light. And I think with this whole Dominion settlement, with the voting machines that just happened with, like, Rupert Murdoch, where he had to, like, what did he had to pay, like $800 million to Dominion or something like that.
Yeah,
I
but here,
think, I think what was, I think Rupert Murdoch is trying to save himself further controversy.
well, they both are, but at the same time, like, you mean tell me CNN peddles lies during the election and shit? They were covering for,
CNN gets away with it though.
yeah, they were covering up.
CNN is mainly, I mean, like, that's like a whole umbrella, like CNN, MSNBC,
They're all owned
CBS,
by
all
the
those
same
people.
corporations.
It's all like leftist corporations. Well, then you got Fox News that covers the other side.
Yeah,
And there's only there's like OAN, but like those aren't like really even like big
relevant.
news networks compared to Fox.
Yeah, you
Fox
had
is
like
like the
Roger
only
Ailes.
Fox is like the only corporate media company competing, against these other, aligned corporate media businesses.
Mm-hmm. I think it was in 2013, Obama had signed into law that it has become legal for news stations to propagandize against their own citizens. I forget the name of the executive order or some shit
Mm,
like that. Was like 200146 executive order where they literally made it legal to propagandize against your own American people. They even got away with that shit in like the Iraq war and shit like that. But no, this is they're trying to get rid of the narrative on both sides. And both sides, whether it's Don Lemon or Tucker Carlson, are starting to ask questions on things, but the system is collapsing right now.
mm-hmm.
And they're trying to misinform the people, right? Because it's kind of even like during World War I and World War II, you had the old radio, right? You didn't have
Yeah.
TVs back then. You just had RCA or whatnot.
And I'm sure people wish we could go. I'm sure, like, the government wishes we could go back to that now.
Right. So they can control the narrative.
Well, the thing is that, you have the internet now, and the internet is endless. You know, you
Yeah.
can, whatever somebody says, you can always go back and research them to see if they're lying.
There's always been alternative forms of media, but now those two that we have on our screens were the central point of question, like Bill Maher, right? Like, don't be surprised if they get rid of Bill Maher now, right?
Yeah.
Bill
Well,
Maher is,
Bill Maher, like, he's speaking a lot of sense. I just can't get behind his climatism. You know,
well, he's
like,
from California and shit.
yeah, I cannot get. That's the same with
Jon Stewart,
Robert F. Kennedy.
yeah.
It's the same thing with him. It's like, dude, he says everything right about, like, these vaccines and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and the lockdowns, but then, like, it's, I hear that, like, he's just like this big climate tard, It's like, dude, ain't got no time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that.
Well, that's just it, and that's what I mean. As long as they can focus on the green agenda, everything else you can say is true, right? Because what is the
Mhm.
central focus right now is the Green Deal,
Well,
right?
yeah, they're using climate change to push these stupid agendas through.
Because the government has to keep spending no matter what. It is in a black hole. The Federal Reserve has to keep monetizing the debt because all the other countries are dipping the dollar right now.
Mm-hmm.
This is where I said before, you're going to see some crazy shit that's like voodoo shit
Mm-hmm.
because they have to keep monetizing the debt. I mean, when 2008 hit, Ben Bernanke lied to Congress. Ron Paul put him in his place and said, "You're monetizing the debt."
Merrick Garland lied to Congress.
All of them do. They don't care. Jordan or Clapper, the old CIA guy,
Oh,
John,
all 51 CIA chiefs lied in that letter,
right? And they don't care because,
stating that that laptop was Russian disinformation. But
right.
Anthony Blinken was in on that shit, telling
Hmm.
them to help. It was pretty much to help Biden win the election.
Right, it was, but at the same time, it's kind of like that Seinfeld episode with Newman where he works at the post office. If you control the mail, you control information.
See, but here's the thing about it. We're finding out about this now, even though like the majority of us are not stupid and we had an idea that this was going on.
Oh,
But
exactly.
this is as best as we can do as a nation is just sit here and bitch and talk about it. We can't hold anybody accountable because they wore suits and they were on TV and they held these high positions. There's no accountability. There's no putting people in jail like they did to the January 6th people that are still rotting in jail. I mean, it's just atrocious, the shit that these people get away with. It's like, how much longer are people just going to continue to just sit here and let these people that that make money off of you, literally, you pay to put them in office just to be corrupt and to lie to you? How much longer are you just going to keep sitting here and just talking about it like you and I are? You know, people say, "Oh, well, we can't, fight or, anything like
We
that." Well,
can't
you know
kill
what?
them.
The Constitution protects you from that.
Right. Well, did you see that one video where the dad pierced his son ear
Yeah, yeah, and the
and the cops
cops
showed
came
up
in.
at his
Yeah,
door? Right. That's like totalitarianism.
hmm
It's like straight up communism,
the
you know?
FBI, the ATF, the CIA, NSA. I don't want them. They don't need to be. They don't need to be here anymore. They should be disbanded completely. And the only thing that we really need for policing is, like sheriff's deputies and, the sheriff's department. We don't need the city police. We can just have, a sheriff's department run these cities.
Right.
Elected by the people for the people.
Well, congratulations, Ronnie. It sounds like you're becoming more and more of an anarchist like me. But here's the thing. Like, I'll try to explain it like I explained to our buddy Josh, because he's like, you just want everything go to shit. And it's like, no, I don't want everything to go to shit. I just know it's going to shit,
Yeah,
right?
it is. Look at Chicago, dude. Chicago's getting terrible.
Right. But that's because the system is failing. Like, people, and I try to explain this to like our friends and stuff like that when we're at the bar and shit. I was just at the fucking bar this weekend talking to a random guy. All of a sudden, he ended up being a prepper too and shit because he's seen what it was. And I said, yeah, I'm a fucking prepper,
Mm-hmm.
but completely random guy, And me and him were talking for a good hour, having cigs and shit, buying each other shots, but just talking about exactly this. And I said, well, wanting the Titanic to sink and knowing the Titanic is going to sink are two different things. But as an anarchist, it's not that you want the Titanic to sink. It's just like you're kind
You're
of like
ready for it
Rose.
to sink.
Huh?
You're ready for it to sink.
Exactly right. Because you understand human nature and you also understand how governments and religions have coexisted throughout history, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing has killed more people than governments and religion. And when they team up, they can do massive damage. And you have politicians sponsoring religious people,
Yeah.
right? Like, look at Trump and shit. Perfect example. He goes to like, church and shit, and he convinced the what do you call them, evangelicals?
Yeah, evangelical. Yeah.
Yeah, like the hardcore religious people and shit. But the guy
Mm-hmm.
committed adultery hundreds of times. If that guy really believed in that shit and stepped foot in the church, he would light on fire and shit from all the sins he did.
Yeah.
Right? Right? But that's where I'm getting at is the point is that eventually all we reach that peak of it doesn't work anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
eventually it's kind of like you can keep building a ladder, but you can't build it to heaven, right?
Yeah.
Physically.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually the bitch just tips over and you die because the higher
Yeah.
you build it, the harder you're going to hit when it falls over.
Mm-hmm.
But, that's perfectly fine. But at the same time, get a gun.
Yeah.
Get a gun. Because, like I said, buckle up because things are going to get very, very crazy.
Yeah.
And, it's very similar. People need to realize and do their history check on when we are at war, especially a world war, all habeas corpus, all rights, the Constitution is gone because it's the continuity of government, the continuity of religion. They have to survive by any means necessary to restart and reformulate the population again, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I told our buddy Josh, because he's like, oh, everything's all screwed up in the schools and shit like that. I said, yeah, because they took religion out of schools.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, I agree with
Thank
that.
you, Rockefeller.
Yeah, Josh said, yeah, I agree with it. And I said, yeah, that's perfectly fine. Religion is a great structure. You had the nuclear family in like the 40s and 50s, right?
Mm-hmm.
Get your white picket fence, get your little spot dog, your little beagle and shit, and go to church.
That's the important things, though. Having a
Yeah.
family gives you something to work for. It gives you something to be proud of.
Yeah, principles.
Yeah.
But now look at the structure now. Now the structure is deteriorating. Now people can't afford to raise their kids. They can even barely afford to raise their own family.
A lot of one parent households.
Right. And you have uh, a lot of children out of wedlock, especially with the African American community. I think something like 80% of the kids are in the African American community are born out of wedlock.
Mm-hmm.
So you continue to see this structural deterioration, and kind of like what I explained to our buddy Josh is like when I say a collapse, it doesn't just mean a financial or economic one. It means like a whole basic structure of society,
Oh yeah.
right?
Well, and that's just it. It's like with everything now, it's like
It's in
to
the
have
open
a
now.
family is like almost to be looked down upon, I feel like.
Well, it is because society is deteriorating at such a pace and it's so widely open that the people in charge are doing everything in their power to confuse everybody just a little bit longer,
Mm-hmm.
trying to duct tape the shit back together a little bit longer so they can come up with a solution. But they already have a solution, right? Because they were the one,
It's like the longer they keep telling you a lie, the more believable it becomes.
right? And if you're kind of like me and you're an anarchist, you believe nothing except the fact of believing in yourself, right? It's kind of
Exactly.
going back to the Titanic. It's the fallacy that the media at the time, the celebrities that they got to promote the Titanic,
Mm-hmm.
it's unsinkable, the world's biggest ship, the unsinkable. Everybody who's ever been on a fucking boat, no matter what the size is, you could have a state of the art yacht and it can still sink.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the
Well,
illusion that it
maybe not
can't.
Jeff Bezos's boat. That
Right,
thing's
because he's
pretty
got a
big.
helicopter, and if it does sink, it'll just fly the fuck
That
off.
guy's got so much money. He paid to have a bridge taken off so they could move his boat out into the open sea. An
Right.
overpass. They had him take he had him take out an overpass.
Yeah, and I think the structural bridge or whatnot. I think
Yeah.
that was made in Sweden or something like that.
Yeah.
His boat took like 5 years to build. But as I said before, this is where, due to the fiat currencies, and the ancient Rome did the same thing. I think they had the denarii was their currency. But the more and more they dilute it, the more and more they use that fake money to gather up real items.
Mm-hmm.
And the more and more real items that they gather up while everybody else gets poor, ultimately it collapses in on itself, because you've created so many poor people that eventually they just eat the rich, right? Like, that's what we've all been hearing lately. You heard it in 2011, Occupy Wall Street.
Yeah.
Eat the rich, eat the rich. This is all the rich people's fault. You know, we kind of brought this up before, where, well, who made them rich? The politicians, right?
Mm-hmm.
They work with one another, but eventually they're politicians. They just stab everybody in the back.
Yeah.
You know, oh, you need to tax the rich. Yo, we need to tax the rich. Oh, well, who made them rich? The politicians. And the politicians are like, okay, we'll keep them off your back a little bit longer, but you got to pay us a little bit more, right? So it's a little incestuous relationship that ultimately just collapses in on itself. And that's what you're
And
seeing.
that is the killer of all politics, is the highly equitable political donors,
Mm-hmm.
because they get the first dibs on everything.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's just it. You know, when I try to convince people, like, when I hear people like, oh, everything's going to shit and stuff like that, it's like, okay, then why do you continue to vote? You're voting for a system that's trying to kill you. It would just be better, like I told our buddy Josh, you have two options, and only two options at this point. You can either be like Moses and stand at the top of the hill and say, repent,
Mm-hmm.
or you can be like Noah and build your ark. I've been building my ark for the last 5 years, trying to tell everybody, get your own goddamn ark, you know? And
Yeah.
eventually, just like Noah, when the floods come and wipes out the wicked, you're gonna have people screaming, trying to get on board and shit. And eventually, that's where even Noah said, like, no, I'd been telling your asses for 100 years, and you started making fun of me for building a goddamn ship, an ark in the middle of the forest,
Mm-hmm.
right? But what kind of led people to finally believe in Noah's Ark, or Noah? It really wasn't the floods or the rain coming. It was all the animals
Mm-hmm.
gathering themselves, right? Was it a pair, two pair?
2 by 2, yeah.
Yeah, male and
Boy and a
female.
girl.
And that's kind of where, you know, like, you ever watch the show Ancient Aliens
No.
with Giorgio?
No.
Well, essentially, they say that Noah's Ark necessarily wasn't a real wooden ark ship. That was just figuratively.
Mm-hmm.
What Noah's Ark really was a DNA codex, where Noah was given like some sort of instrument or tool by aliens to gather up the DNA so he could survive, because there's no way you could feed all them animals for
Yeah.
that long. You know, there'd be so much toxic shit on that boat.
Yeah.
The smell of it would kill you. Want to jump off of it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So in the show Ancient Aliens, they were essentially saying that, like, that was just a figurative story, when in all actuality, Noah's Ark was just a DNA codex, where, kind of like Man of Steel movie with Superman,
Mm-hmm.
it was in his blood. All of his ancestors and the ability to create humans of his ancestors was injected into his blood by his father, and he was shipped off into another planet, kind of similar to that, figuratively or what have you.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like religion wise, I mean, even during ancient Rome, the system became so corrupt, and it was manipulated by not only the politicians, but also primarily the religious
Mm-hmm.
people in charge. And that's why you always see, you know, old castle times. I don't know, was that 15th century, 14th century, or
Yeah,
what?
something like that, yeah.
Right. You see all the cardinals and shit like that. Well, what's the very first thing the cardinals always do when the system starts to fail? They always rob the treasury. They always rob all the gold, all the coins,
Mm-hmm.
before everything hits the ship, because at the end of the day, they preach God, but at the end of the day, they're all selfish, right?
Mm-hmm.
They all kind of realize it's bullshit. You know, if
Yeah.
I can't preach God anymore if I'm dead. But that's what I'm getting at, is that ultimately you will see churches burning and stuff like that because they've colluded together to create such a inhospitable society where there's so much poor disease and despair where everybody just like needs to unleash their anger on everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why they're trying to get rid of Tucker and Don and stuff like they're trying to conform everybody into complacency because everybody knows shit's hitting the fan and they're spending all this money in Ukraine. We ain't got no money. How can we spend money in Ukraine, but yet we can't pay our bills at home, right?
Yeah.
Well, this is where the government and the Federal Reserve, the banks, all throughout history have done this.
Well, I think the government really shot themselves in the foot this time because I don't think anybody's going to be buying it.
Well, that's just it. I mean,
The only people that I see buying it are the people that are still for Ukraine.
well, that's just it. What's that old saying? Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. And fool
Yeah.
me again, fool me again.
Yeah, George Bush. And the fool can't
Yeah.
fool me again.
Yeah. So that's kind of it. I mean, I'm going to be 35 next month. You're 36.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, look at some of the shit we've seen in our lifetime, okay? You saw the Berlin Wall fall.
Crypto Spurdy Milwaukee.
Yeah, crypto spirit Milwaukee. You saw the Desert Storm.
Yeah.
You saw Desert Storm. You saw Y2K. You saw the
9/11.
dot-com bubble collapse. It just keeps
9/11.
getting worse and worse and worse and
Mm-hmm.
deteriorating. But at the same time, the narrative that what was the narrative against, 9/11? We were attacked.
Mm-hmm.
But not a lot of people know Osama bin Laden's family sold all their airline stocks. They sold a bunch of stocks before it even hit. Well, who gave them the heads up? The American government. They needed a patsy, right?
Well, I'm hearing something is that the CIA knew about these guys, these hijackers all along.
They did. I've said that
They
before.
had tabs on them,
Yeah,
and
and they
they
did
just
nothing.
didn't
And
do
then they want to
nothing.
blame the cross information between the CIA and the FBI.
Mm-hmm.
But that's also where I'm getting at is that the government either creates a crisis or allows a crisis to happen, right?
Yeah.
Because if they allow a crisis to happen that they had no intention of doing themselves, they don't have as many fingerprints on it. But at the same time, they can still control the back narrative of it, right? So all the
Mm-hmm.
hijackers died. Okay, now we can create a narrative, right? We can create a backstory for all of them and shit. You ever seen the what is it called? It was a documentary that they created on 9/11, something zero, I think. Where essentially they identified one of the hijackers because his passport was laying in the middle of the street, but yet jet fuel melted fucking stainless steel at like 3,000 degrees, but somehow this paper passport made it through all of that and made it on the street. I forget the name of it. It was a great documentary, but it literally showed like the physics of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
A building can't fall at free fall. Jesse Ventura was talking about it and shit because Jesse Ventura, I mean, he played part of the system. He was an ex-Navy SEAL.
Mm-hmm.
He got lied about the Vietnam War and shit, and they just keep doing it over and over again, hoping that everybody's dumb enough to do it. So I forget the name of it. It was a really good documentary. It wasn't Inside Job, but it was
Inside Man, Burning Man.
yeah. But it was just a couple of different things like that. I try to explain to people like a collapse isn't a one-time event, it's a process, kind of
Mm-hmm.
like ancient Rome. It hits a peak, it'll fall, and then a savior, right? A savior will come in, give everybody a little bit more hope. It'll rise a little bit, not all the way to the peak, and then all of a sudden it'll come down even faster and farther. And that's why I say you can kind of tell the economic peak was in 2000 because that was like the height of manufacturing. That was the height of euphoria. That was the height of everything is good. We hit a surplus with the Clintons, but how did we get that surplus? Oh, we just gave a bunch of loans to fucking poor people. you know. So the year 2000, from like 97 to 2000, that was really the peak of society in America
Mm-hmm.
because we had hollowed out so much. Ever since then, we've just been falling and printing more money to try to prop it up, need even more money to prop it up, but it just falls even farther and farther and farther. Kind of like a
Check
drug habit. Eventually, you
check
got to hit
this
rock
out.
bottom. Huh?
From Bloomberg Business, Tucker Carlson's Fox News exit erases $507 million in value.
Yeah. So why would you do that unless you needed a new narrative to control? Either something big is coming down the pipeline and they don't want Tucker to fucking start talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like, who was it? I'm trying to think. You kind of saw this shit happening during, like, remember ISIS?
Yeah.
Where did ISIS come from? It just popped up, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you never see anybody's face in ISIS because they all wear the garbs.
Yeah.
So it could literally be anybody. It could be CIA. It could be French. It could be the SAS. Anybody could play an ISIS fighter,
Mm-hmm.
because you can't identify it.
Raytheon Technologies beats on earnings. Are you
Yeah.
surprised by that?
No, it's the military industrial complex.
Yeah.
I tried explaining this to a couple of people how the system works. So they
It's
expand
almost
for
like when we're not in wartime, like Raytheon, and Oshkosh and all these, big
government
military
contract.
industrial complex organizations. They kind of sit idle, and eventually they need a bump because they're making weapons for war. You know.
Right. The show The Boys is a perfect example of that. America doesn't make anything, but they make Patriot missiles.
Mm-hmm.
America is the world's biggest arms dealer. That's why we make money. What was it? In the 1980s, as I said before, when they were raising interest rates in the late 70s, early 80s, everything was collapsing and shit. Well, the banks needed money. Who'd they get all the money from? All the drug cartels. Right? Well, who gave all the money to the drug cartels? The Reagan administration and shit. Iran-Contra, right?
Yep.
It's all just a big giant inside psyop to keep the system going just a little bit longer.
If you
But now,
can't if you can't manage the military industrial complex with wars, the only other way to manage them would be bailouts. And who in their right mind wants to do that too? Is to continue to bail out the military industrial complex because they would lose so much money exponentially.
well, now the new narrative, oh, we're running out of ammo because we gave it all to Ukraine and pissed it all away. That's bullshit. One of the biggest buyers of ammunition over the last 10, 15, 20 years has been the FBI,
Mm-hmm.
right? They have their own contract. But
Now it's
this
the
is,
IRS, dog.
yeah, the IRS. I mean, this is just another,
That's unfortunate.
right? This is just another form of totalitarianism. This is why you have the Second Amendment. And now, like they're taking away free speech and shit, but Elon Musk used capitalism to buy free speech back, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every single time they try to chaos theory, the more they try to get more control, the more out of control it becomes.
Mm-hmm.
The more they can't control the narrative anymore. Now they're trying to ban assault weapons.
Did
Well,
you hear anything? Did you hear any updates on that Restrict Act bill? Did they pass that?
every goddamn law nowadays is a restrict act,
Yeah.
every single thing is a law. I mean, this is why Americans are starting to finally realize like what the fuck is going on.
Mm-hmm.
That's why people are just waiting for that initial go ahead, right? And you already saw it with January 6th kind of shit. where, you know, the, how do I put it? Like, you know, the Trump supporters for the longest time back the blue, right?
Yeah.
And where did a majority of that back the blue come from? Colin Kaepernick, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he's disrespecting the flag. You know, he doesn't respect cops and shit because he called them pigs. Remember, he was wearing the socks with little pigs on them and shit. Well, all of a sudden, it just gained steam, right? So from
Mm-hmm.
2016 to 2020, the right wing was backing the blue. But then once they realized the system, right,
Mm-hmm.
isn't working, no justice, no peace. They attacked all the police at the state capitol and shit, right? So this is how quickly what I mean is like the paradigm can shift like that. You can be a supporter of something, but once the support doesn't support you, you attack it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you're going to see something even bigger than that. I mean, look at France right now. You don't hear any coverage of it. They're still protesting. I just saw they just I think they just stopped the London Stock Exchange and shit because they
Yeah,
just,
they did. Yep.
yeah. Well, that's just it. This all was part of like 2008. The, you know, to use the whole entire Titanic reference, you can debate it or not, but 2008 was the Titanic hitting the iceberg. And for the last 10 years, the government, the banks, the media, they've all been telling you, oh, that was just the propeller. Well,
Mm-hmm.
guess what? All the poor people at the bottom of the boat now are starting to feel the water first.
Mm-hmm.
And all the rich people are
Billy Zane.
starting to get all their shit together in order. They're pulling all their
Mm-hmm.
money out of the banks, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've said that before. If you ever want to learn behavioral economics and not or predictive analytics or whatever you want to call it, the Titanic is a perfect example of luxury, euphoria, stupidity, and ignorance. And
Speaking of
event.
luxury, you want to take a guess at how much money Alphabet, the parent company of Google, gave Google's CEO last year?
Oh, what's his name? Nashar.
Sundar Pichai
Yeah,
or something?
Sundar Pundit.
Yeah.
I don't know, 35 million.
226 million.
Right. You're never
That's
going to be able to.
insane, dude.
Yeah,
That's
right.
insane. And they're laying off people.
Well, that's what I mean. So and this is where I'm getting at, is that that's essentially called something called the bullwhip effect,
Mm-hmm.
where 2020 hit, everything collapsed monetary wise because we live in a debt based system, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you shut down the government or you shut down the economy, when you shut down a debt based system, people no longer have the ability to service that debt. So that's why the economy collapsed so quickly. It collapsed in 2 months. And that's what I said before, leading up to 2020. I was telling everybody the economy isn't as great as it is. You're all full of shit, and eventually it'll be revealed because the minute you
Mm-hmm.
start raising interest rates, which they were doing, then all of a sudden 6 months later, COVID hit. Oh, economy collapses because it's debt based. People can no longer pay their bills. That's why we're still on rent moratoriums or what have you. They're still prolonging 4 years later, they're still prolonging student loan debt.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how can the government pay off student loan debt when it can't even pay its own bills?
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Why are we paying taxes if the government can just print its own money?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And this is right. So this is where the average American now is starting to figure that out. Like, well, wait a minute here. This is all just a big game.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all it's ever been. A game of people. And, you know, the economy collapsed because you couldn't service their debt. There's more debt than there are actual dollars to pay that debt. That's why all these banks are collapsing. Like First Republic is about to collapse now too,
Mm-hmm.
because they have more liabilities than they do assets. It's fractional reserve banking. You give me $10, I save $1 and I loan out $9. Well, what happens if everybody needs those $9? You only have $1 in reserve. That won't happen. And then it happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you're starting to see now it's picking up steam. They
Mm-hmm.
can't control the narrative anymore. Well, who is actually telling the narrative? Tucker Carlson, Don Lemon, for both sides. Why didn't they get rid of them in 2021 or 2022? Why now? Because the system is starting to fall even faster now.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't want to give people hope, right?
Yeah.
Back to the crack up boom and a bullwhip effect. In 2020, the system collapsed, the monetary system collapsed. Well, it collapsed in 2008, but they've just been pumping more money into it. But it collapsed in 2020. They print up, $15 trillion between the government and the Federal Reserve. What was 2020 to 2021? That was all called a crack up boom, where they print so much money and it goes so much into the system that all prices rise.
Mm-hmm.
Crack up boom. Supply chains and stuff like that. That's exactly what we had. Well, then, towards the end of a crack up boom is a bullwhip effect, where they pump so much money into the system, people literally start to realize or think, illusionary wise, that this is actual real growth.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if it's real growth, the economy's doing so good, right? And all during 2021, Biden was like, "Oh, look how good the economy's doing. It's rebounding." You even heard pieces of shit like Jim Cramer go, "Oh, this is a V-shaped recovery."
Oh, dude, he took some serious L's this year.
Right, and that's what I mean, because he's part of the game, part of the
Yeah.
narrative to keep people
And
dumbed
he still
down.
has a job.
Exactly. He's been wrong his whole fucking life. But yet they put him in front of everybody to
Yeah.
keep telling that lie.
Yep.
And all of a
False
sudden,
motivation, dog.
yeah, and the
Or
bullwhip
false
effect is,
optimism, I mean.
yeah, and the bullwhip effect is where, oh, I can only, like, the supply chains. Oh, you can only get there's like a 6 month or a 1 year delay on your dry washer, on your washer and dryer.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? Oh, supply chains. Okay, well, and if you're like a home builder or some shit, you're like, okay, well, I need 200 of them then. If I need 20 of them, you're gonna double it up automatically, right? Because you
Yep.
don't know what the future is gonna look like, but there's a lot of demand right now. Google's a perfect example. All these tech companies were hiring all these people, but it was all artificial demand. And now, the very next year, they're all laying them all off.
Because they're going with all chat GBT,
No,
GPT.
that's just another excuse. I mean, all these companies, we can't find workers. I said this even to my boss in my review that I got fucking 50 cents, you piece of shit. You know, I said when I first got to the company, there was like 25 people in my department. Now there's like 7 of us, but yet we're hitting record profits. How?
Mm-hmm.
Explain that to me. We had 25 skilled people. Now we have 3 skilled people, and the other 4 barely show up to work. But yet we're more efficient. So like I told my supervisor and shit,
I'm
because
only
he's a
worth 50
fucking,
cents to you, prick.
yeah, because he's a dork, and this is why the American worker doesn't give a shit about their boss or the companies anymore, because they realize what a scam it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you just hit record profits, but you're laying people off? Well, fuck you. Inflation's at an all-time high, and that's where I said, like, you're gonna start to see people when they get laid off, they're gonna start capping fucking CEOs. You saw something similar to 2008, 2010. Caterpillar in
Mm-hmm.
France, the Caterpillar company in France, I believe, laid off a bunch of their workers. And the workers were like, oh, but the CEO got $32 million that year in bonuses.
Mm-hmm.
They kidnapped the CEO, and held him hostage in his office. And they're like, no, fuck you. You got 32 million. You're gonna sit here, otherwise we're gonna kill you. Essentially,
Mm-hmm.
you made that money on our backs. We have families to feed, and the CEO is like, trying to justify it, but he can't because
Yep.
now his life is in danger.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna start to see something like that, very similar, where, and as I said before, and you're going to start to see it in the fall now because this is where all the pension systems are going to go bankrupt.
Yep.
All the insurance companies are going to start going bankrupt.
Oh yeah.
It's it's
Well,
a
you can see it now with all these disasters going on all over the country.
right, and this is where, as I said before, uh, I just watched. I was telling your brother this when went to go see that movie this past Friday, Evil Dead Rise. Good movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I told your brother I just rewatched Live Free or Die Hard.
Yeah.
Bruce Willis. It's probably
Mm-hmm.
the best Die Hard movie. What was the premise of it? A cyber attack, a fire sale, where a fire sale is they take out the financial system, or no, transportation they take out, and telecommunications.
Yeah.
Then they take out the transportation in the financial system, and then they take out the utilities and the municipalities.
Mm-hmm.
They take them all out just so they can kind of create chaos and come up with a solution for it.
Mm-hmm.
But in the whole entire premise of that movie was he was just gonna steal everybody's social security numbers, because the premise of Live Free or Die Hard, the bad guy, Timothy Olyphant,
Mm-hmm.
he did all of that fire sale was so that he can cut the internet traffic down, so he could hack into the government, the corporations, and the wealthy elites all hide their money and backup storage data into one place.
Yeah.
It was like in Baltimore or some shit in the movie,
Huh.
because they all collude with one another. The
Yeah.
politicians,
Mm-hmm.
the elites, the rich, corporations, they all hide their information at one thing as a backup drive. They kind of created that during 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he ended up hacking into it, but in order to hack into it, to speed up the ability to hack into it, he needed to create a chaotic cyber attack on America to kill
Yeah.
all the information, all the servers all around the world, so that he could hack into it faster.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you're going to start to see something like that, where there's going to be a cyber attack that nobody can be held accountable to justify all the pensions going bust, all the insurance companies going bust. They were just bringing out Warren Buffett before, and he's like, the government hasn't spent one dime on your deposits and shit. Like, the government's broke itself.
Mm-hmm.
Who gave all the money to these banks? The Federal Reserve and the governments, you know? So now you're starting to see the elite, top elite come out and saying everything's fine. And that's where you get your Billy Zane, I have a child moment.
I have a child.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, buckle up, because uh, I was on a job interview in January, and I told the vice president, how I love finance and stuff. And I
Mm-hmm.
told him, you know, I'm no guru or anything, but I literally told the vice president on an interview of this company, if I were you, I'd start stacking sandbags. And it was a petro company. They do like oil and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I told him to his face, because I don't give a shit, who gives a fuck?
Yeah.
Like, no, it's kind of like the weirdest interview ever. Is it really weird, or do you just not like want to listen?
Mm-hmm.
Because if some random fucking person like me came in there and told you to start stacking sandbags in January and that there's a banking crisis manifesting, he's kind of like, you're only interviewing for this. Why are you telling me that? And that's where I said before, kind of like in the interview, well, I tell people what they need to hear, not what they want to hear.
And he called you back and he was like, you still looking for a job?
Yeah, business analyst.
Yeah.
No, I never get that phone call back, fucker. But
Oh.
But it's one of those things where I've done that even during 2022, 2021. I said that I'd be on interviews and shit. I interviewed at a hedge fund for marketing. I was telling the same thing, and it was a wife and a husband. They ran this hedge fund for the last like 20 years here in Wisconsin. And he goes, "This is one of the most bizarre interviews I've ever had in my life." And I said, "Good. That way I made an impression on you. That way you'll remember me when this does happen." Kind of sits back. Okay, I get it. Called me back for a second interview and stuff like that. Went real well. Never got a call back. I'm like, "You motherfuckers." Like, why? That's why you see all these companies that are just gaslighting all these people. All these companies don't want to pay back those PPP loans.
Yeah.
They don't want to pay back all that fucking free money they got. How many companies got free money, right? Like I just said in the review to my company, to my fucking piece of shit boss. You know, did Thanos snap his fingers and wipe out half the population?
Yes.
No.
He could
No.
have.
Something like 6 million people died from COVID. There's 350 million. So where is everybody, right?
Yeah.
So I said, so if you have a smaller pool of candidates, that makes all the remaining workers that you do have that much more valuable.
Did your boss say no more Marvel analogies?
No. I always rib into him and shit about the pizzas and shit, pizza parties.
Yeah.
I said, oh, uh, he's like, okay, guys, we're gonna change it up. We're gonna have pork and stuff like that.
Ugh.
And egg
Not a
salad.
pork guy, dog. Not a pork guy.
It was good, but it was just dry, and I'm just that kind of prick. I'm like, damn. I'm like, this is better than heartburn. All that pizza was kind of giving me heartburn, But I was like, this is really greasy. I might have to go shit again,
Yeah.
But my supervisor was like, Dylan, companies don't even, give their employees pizzas and stuff. I said, damn. I said, maybe that's why they're struggling. Workers. I said, I told my supervisor, I was like, what you should do? You should really like change it up and give everybody like Jimmy John subs, but don't give them a full sub. Don't even give them a half a sub. Give us like a quarter of a sub. And you know what? To make everybody really happy, make it all tuna too. And he's just like rolling his eyes. I'm like, yeah, fuck you, you prick. Like, and I said, and this is why people want socialism. This is why unions are making a comeback. Is because they're sick and tired of the stupid fucking bullshit corporate game that you guys want to continue to play. None of you in management do shit. You don't know shit. We've all had supervisors and managers that are dumber than shit, don't know anything, but they're in charge because they're yes men or yes women. They sit there and they try to play that corporate game of like, well, here we believe in family. Well, if you believe in family, why are you treating everybody like shit? You're beating everybody. I'm pretty sure it's not love when you beat yourself. But I'm always making comments and shit. Like I had my yearly review, and they said, oh, they give you one of these self-assessments and shit.
Yeah.
And it was 1 to 5 ranked, and I gave myself 15s. So it was like a grand total of 72 you could get. I got like 350 or some shit. And my supervisor, he ranked me really, really low, like below average.
Yeah.
And I said, how can you rank me below average? I've been with this company for 8.5 years. I literally am doing the work of 8 people. I said, you've been here for a year and a half, and you don't even know how many products we make. He didn't like that. I said, I don't care what you like or don't like. How can you be your age and not know, been for the company for a year and a half? You're in charge and you don't know anything. I told him, did anybody get a 5? He goes, no, nobody got a 5. I said, then why is it on that review then? If you're doing 1 to 5 and nobody gets a 5, why is it even on there? You know?
Yeah.
Well, Dylan, and I said, well, nothing. Quit playing fucking stupid, dude. Like you're
Was this
40 something
today?
years old. No, it was about a week and a half ago.
Mm.
And they're like, you need to sign this. I was like, I'm not signing that. Well, you need to sign it. Well, I don't agree with it. And they're like, but you need to sign it. It says right here, like, you don't have to agree to with your review, but you do need to sign it. That way you confirm that we went over it together. I said, we didn't go over anything. You screwed me over my raise. I said you could have gone to McDonald's and got me a McChicken off the dollar menu, and that would have been more worth than that 50 fucking cents. He was just shaking his head, but I'm like, screw you. You can't find workers. You treat the workers like you got like shit. Yeah, because I want to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning just to put up with your bullshit.
Mhm.
Like, who do you think I'm gonna cap for the minute this shit all hits the fan? But that's where I'm getting at is like everybody is fed up with this corporate bullshit.
Yeah.
You're probably fed up with it at your company. Oh, just do more, and if you do more, we'll take care of you after we beat you. So the running gag, because we have at my work, it's mostly baby boomers. They're just ready to retire, but they're just like there for the healthcare. So they just tell like supervisors to fuck off, leave me alone, or I'm retiring.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not working overtime kind of shit.
Yep.
So now, like in the middle of meetings and stuff, because we have like, like a lot of companies, we have like 5 fucking useless meetings that solve nothing. We're going to talk about efficiency. Who cares? There's like 5 of us,
Yeah.
doing the work of 10 people.
Yeah.
Well, we're doing less, or we're doing more with less. How does that help me? So like I'm always in the meetings making smart ass comments and shit. And oh, we broke a record this month. And everybody's like, "Oh, cool, what do we get now?" I tell people, "Listen, everybody, we're a family here, okay? The beatings will stop once morale improves, okay?" Like a group of like 15 of us and shit. I'm like, listen up, everybody. Let's go, like, let's be a little bit more positive, okay? The beatings will stop once morale improves, okay? And if they don't improve, the beatings will continue, everybody. Okay? Good talk. And then I just walk out of the meeting. And people are like, I've been talked to by HR, and they're like, Dylan, you know, we can get you're kind of like on the cusp of getting fired. I said, oh, damn it. I said, you know what? I was like, but then I'll be missing all that pepperoni and stuff, God forbid. Like people are just like, I'm the comedian at work and shit because I don't give a fuck. I'm like, let this fucking piece of shit burn then. You want to beat the piss out of your workers, and then you want to turn around and play victim and say that nobody wants to work. Cut me a break, you pieces of shit. This is a multi-million-dollar company, and you're complaining.
Yeah.
Problem beating the piss out of everybody during COVID and putting a gun to everybody's head and saying, you're essential, you're essential. I'm going to kill you, but I need you. So at work, it's, companies are so fucking pathetic nowadays. How the hell are you going to treat your workers like shit and then play victim and cry and, oh, nobody wants to work. No, nobody wants to work for you and your bullshit. Like, stop with this bureaucracy of just stupid crap, dude. You know, we all have bosses and shit that don't know anything, don't do anything,
Mm-hmm.
that just kiss ass. Just play the game. Like my supervisor told me, Dylan, you just got to play the game. I looked him dead ass in the eyes and said, I am the game. Uh,
Oh shit.
and I had to talk with my supervisor, HR, and my head super. I have like 3 supervisors, right?
Yeah.
I had to sit down with them in HR, and of course they're all older than me, so they're all trying to bully me and peer pressure me.
Mm-hmm.
So, I said, look, I've been with this company for 8.5 years. I've seen you guys take all the credit on the way up and none of the accountability on the way down. And for somebody being the youngest person in this room, I kind of find that odd, you know, all this preaching and stuff of how we're a family and stuff, but yet you take all the credit on the way up and then you don't take any accountability on the way down. I said, we went from 20 to 25 people, skilled people, down to like 7 of us.
Mm-hmm.
Now, who made that decision? HR, did you make that decision? Did you make that decision? Did you make that decision? I said, I've been with this department for like 8.5 years. You've been here for a year and a half. And, if you don't mind me asking, I won't say his name, but I'm just like to my supervisor, if you don't mind me asking, do you have any experience in this? And I won't say that what I do for a living, but like, do you have any experience in this? Dylan, that's not relevant right now. Oh, I think it's very relevant because it's a safety issue. And, we all care about safety, right? And I work in a HVAC and manufacturing company. So I called up my supervisor in front of everybody, HR and shit. And I said, okay, because I said this verbatim. I'm like, because I don't know what this means because I'm just a dumb, stupid millennial, I
Mm-hmm.
said, what does the acronym HVAC stand for? I put him on the spot. He didn't know it. And I said, right, that's what I thought. I said, this is what I'm getting at with the point of this. You guys want to preach how I need to be more responsible and be more mature, but yet you guys are hiring people that have no qualifications.
What
You're
does HVAC
essentially
stand for, dog?
HVAC stands for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning.
Yeah.
So I call out my supervisor, and his supervisor is even fucking dumber than he is. And HR is right there. And the HR guy was kind of laughing a little bit. But I'm like, you're the one who hired him. I'd fire you and him. But I'm just like, dude, I am just, and everybody at work, I'm like the therapist at work because everybody's just like comes up to me to get a laugh.
Yeah.
Because I'm just like, what's the worst they're gonna do? They fire you, you cash out your 401k, and you go to the Jamaica or some shit. You go work for another shitty company. Oh, boo hoo! And that's what I mean. These companies have exploited their workers to a point they don't give a shit no more. Everybody's burnt out. You know, during COVID, we were laying off and furloughing everybody, but my president of my company put in a brand new swimming pool.
Oh, jeez.
Right. Like, so you're a sociopath.
Where does he live?
He lives in actually where I grew up. I won't say the town and shit, but he's a piece of
Oh.
shit. Just plays stupid. The whole company's collapsing, and he's just kind of walking around like, maybe we'll get 2 pizzas.
He's gonna wish he never put that pool in. Save
No,
that
he,
pool.
he don't give a fuck. He's just another corrupt piece of shit supervisor, like a lot of these companies.
Mm-hmm.
All these companies are all run by a bunch of fucking baby boomers that have kissed ass for 30 years, right? How many times have we all heard our listeners, oh, I've got 25 years of experience. Doing what? Throwing people under the bus and kissing ass? Like
Yeah.
that's your 25 and flying under the radar for 25 years? Like you're proud of that? Well, I'm proud that I'm a president of a company better than you. It's like, right, but you're a piece of shit. You create no value. The company's in the tubes. You're fucking proud of that? Right, because you're a sociopath, because only a sociopath can lie to themselves and say, hey, good job. I ran a company into the ground. But with me at work, dude, I just been samurai chopping these motherfuckers. Hey, congratulations, everybody. Profits are up 110%. How? It's like I call in, they're like, you're supposed to, everybody gets vacation days and shit like that. Well, nobody even shows up. We can't even keep temps.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm arguing with them. They're like, Dylan, when's this job gonna get done? I said, it'll get done when you stop pestering me.
Yeah.
I get it. It'll get done, but it'll get done when I get to pick out the toppings.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like, why are you arguing with the people who know how to do their job?
Mm-hmm.
You can't find workers competent enough. You don't want to pay people shit. Like, are you gonna get off of your ass and come over and help with this? No. Okay, then shut the hell up. I'm
Yeah.
sorry to say that, but dude, like, you're an adult, you know.
Yeah.
And I've tried to explain this to a lot of people. COVID was a godsend because COVID revealed how useless, absolutely useless mid-level management is. Why do
Mm-hmm.
you think all these companies are trying to get everybody back into the offices? It's a power thing.
Mm-hmm.
They paid all these billions of dollars on all these uh, leases and shit for all this is why the commercial real estate's collapsing right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because I'm more efficient working from home. I get even more done. I can get my shit done in 2 hours instead of sitting my ass in the office. Well, we need the camaraderie. Fuck your camaraderie. You fired a bunch of people before during COVID, and now you're playing crying wolf. Go fuck
Mm-hmm.
yourself, right?
Yep.
All these companies treated their workers like they're expendable. Then COVID hits, profits collapse. Quick market, quick marketing, come up with some. Well, instead of expendable, let's call them essential and let's give them some pizza, right?
Yeah.
Oh, now you're essential. It's like when I tell my bosses and shit when they're bitching at me, like, Dylan, you got vacation time. Like, you need to give a 30-day notice to use your vacation time. I said, no, I don't. It's my vacation time. I earned it. If I want to call in and use my vacation time, I'm calling in and using my vacation. You need to give us a 24-hour notice. I said, I just gave you a 6-hour notice. What's the problem here? I said to him, you don't like it that you're not in control. And you don't like the fact that you don't know how to do my job, so you can't replace me right away. Well, Dylan, everybody's replaceable. Well, if everybody's replaceable, why is this place so short-handed like a lot of companies? Hmm. Like I said, dude, at work, I've just been chopping these motherfuckers down. Like, they hate me, dude. And like I even said to my supervisors and even HR, because they're like, Dylan, like, you're kind of like riding the point system. Because like it used to be before, um, if you called in, you got pointed. Well, so many people just started to stop giving a shit. They doubled the points up. So like now you're gonna get fired even faster. What do you think happened? Even more people left. So it's just like it's not working. So why don't you just admit what you've been? And I've said this to like because we have like it's gotten so bad like with a lot of companies where the president or the vice president has a meeting with everybody to see what the problem is and shit. And I'm the person who like raises my hand right away. Well, first I listen to their bullshit, right? And I
Yeah.
raise my hand. Yeah, Dylan, what are some of the problems that you see? You're not letting us pick out the toppings on the pizza parties. Um, you know, we have to pay for our own coffee from the money that we make here just to recycle it into the business.
You do?
Huh?
You have to put money in a coffee machine?
Yeah.
Oh, that's bull crap, dude.
So people started bringing their own coffee makers and shit,
Mm-hmm.
or like little Keurig cups.
Yeah.
They started cracking down on that.
Are you serious?
Yeah, dude, it's like Nazi Germany and shit at these
That's
companies now.
ridiculous.
And so like I work in a shop and stuff. And everybody's got a chair because nobody wants to go in the cafeteria because it's just like it's bullshit.
Mhm.
Everybody's got their workstations or what have you. You need to go into the cafeteria. Why? During COVID you said that was unsafe. Right? Well, so now they're trying to get rid of chairs because they want everybody in the cafeteria because we're a family.
Yeah.
But Otherwise everybody always leaves to go to lunch and eats on their cars and stuff like that. So now we're gonna get rid of chairs. So I said in one of the meetings, yeah, can you stop making this place more of a prison? Dylan, what do you mean by that? Well, we work in a factory. You have a bunch of lights, red and yellow lights everywhere. You have a bunch of lines that we have to stay in the lines for safety reasons, because if we don't stay within these lines, we could get hurt. And now you're taking away the one thing that we actually like is our chairs. It's kind of like you're in a prison cell and you're taking away our bunk as punishment. The president is just like, who the fuck is this guy? I don't give a shit. Let it burn, You guys created this fucking mess, and not a single one of you fucking baby boomers, CEOs,